Hi, I'm Jessica, and welcome to my channel, Truth at Home. Today we're going to have a close-up look at my Bible study notebook. So I'm going to divide this video up into 3 parts. During the first part, we're going to be taking a look at my notebook. During the second part, I'm going to be telling you why I decided to do it this way. And during the third part, I'm going to be giving you tips on how you can make your own Bible study notebook like mine, if you want. So let me just start out by showing you what my Bible study notebook is. So it's a basic plastic folder, like anything that you can get at Walmart for very cheaply. I don't know how much this cost me, probably $1 or something. It actually used to be one of my kids, and I borrowed it from them and said, hey, I'm going to use this now. It's the type that has the little part in the middle where you can attach pages. So look at the back of this. It has these little clasps, right, that you can undo to put pages in. I have a 3-hole puncher, which is very convenient, but you don't actually need that to use this. These are pointy enough to where you can just poke them each through the page and it'll work that way. And so once you've got them poked through the page, then you can just put this whole thing back on and you push those down and it stays really nicely, and there you have your own little book. So the method that I used for my Bible study notebook is that I divided it up into sections, and no, this is not fancy at all. This is very basic. I didn't use like dividers, with labels on them, even though I could have, and maybe one day I will. I just put the title of the section right here. So this one's fertility and childbearing, and I've divided that up into the books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and so forth. I also have a few other topics that I'm collecting verses for. Male and female roles, head covering, covered glory, and the use of symbols, modesty of dress, and jewelry and bodily decoration. Now, I could be collecting verses on a whole host of different topics, and obviously there are topics in the Bible that are extremely important, and some of these maybe aren't that important, but these are topics that previous to this I hadn't known that much about, and I just wanted to learn more about them, and that's why I decided to start collecting verses on these topics. So for each section, for each topic, I started out by using a different colored pen. So for this one, I have a orange pen. For male and female roles, I used a teal pen. For head covering, I used a purple pen. For fertility and childbearing, I used a pink pen because I wanted to be able to clearly see how each verse belonged to that different topic. After a while, though, I actually stopped using the colored pens and I just started using a normal colored pen. It's okay. It still works for my purposes. So that's a look at my very basic Bible study notebook. Not fancy at all. Very easy to use, though, and I like it. So now I'm going to tell you why I decided to do it this way. So first of all, I want to start out by saying that this way of studying the Bible is one of the ways called a topical Bible study. So some verses talk about the same topic without using the same words, right? So I could look up in an index, for example, the word fruitful, right? And I would see a list of all the verses that have that word in it. And then I could look up all those words and see if they're related to the topic I'm studying. I could do that. And that is a very useful way of studying the Bible. However, I feel that the way that I'm doing it is a bit more, I guess you could say, inclusive. Because sometimes verses will talk about the same topic without using the same words. So God may talk about having children without using the word fruitful, right? And I want to find all the verses that I can on that same topic, whatever words they may use, same words or not the same words. So that's one benefit of this topical Bible study, that I can collect various verses that are related to each other, even though they may not always use the same words. Another benefit of the topical Bible study is that I can see what the whole Bible says about one topic, taking into context where each verse is. So that's more of an organic type of study. So I read the books of the Bible one by one, right? As I'm reading the book of the Bible, I'm immersed in that story. I might see a verse that has something to do with the topic I'm learning about or I want to know more about, right? And then I say, okay, that's a great verse to add to my notebook. So then I'll copy it out onto my little card and I'll put it in my notebook. But the great thing about it is that I have seen that verse in its context, right? And it's a much more organic way of studying than just seeing an index that somebody has already prepared and basing my study off of that, right? So again, benefits of topical Bible study. I can collect verses that are related to each other. And I can see what the whole Bible says about one topic, but seeing them in the context of where those verses are found. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to something related to that, which is this. Oh my goodness, if I could just get this open. Okay, you see how in my Bible I've drawn a picture of a tree. The reason that I think that this topical, organic type of Bible study is so important is because we need to ask ourselves where we are getting our worldview from. And as Christians, we want to base our worldview on the Bible, right? So it's very important to study the Bible and understand what it says so that we can make sure that we're basing our worldview on the Bible, not on everybody else's opinions, not on, what we see in movies, everything on social media, what we hear from our friends. We want to make sure that we're basing our worldview on the Bible. So I've drawn this picture. So our worldview is like the trunk right here. Our worldview holds up the branches, okay? And the branches are all the issues of life. So you might have raising children. That's an issue of life. Conception and human life. That's another issue. Male and female roles. That's another issue. And you can add to this tree on all the branches all sorts of different issues. Any issues that you encounter in life, those are all the branches. The branches are held up by our worldview, right? So we are going to deal with those issues of life, and we're going to interpret certain issues of life based upon what our worldview is. And our worldview, in turn, is held up by the roots of what we're basing our whole worldview on. So I want to base my worldview on the Bible. So my roots, hopefully, will be the Bible that will support my worldview, that will determine how I interpret these issues of life. Now, if your roots that hold up your worldview are based on, let's say, humanism, which is another sort of religion, it's a godless sort of religion where we make ourselves our own gods and we determine what's right and what's wrong based upon our own human wisdom. Well, if humanism is in the root area, your worldview is going to be humanism, obviously, and that is going to determine how you interpret all the issues of life, right? And obviously, if you're approaching life from a humanistic worldview, the way that you interpret all those issues is going to be much different from a person whose worldview is based on the Bible. So when dealing with these issues, you really have to go down to the roots and find out what you're basing your worldview on. And you have to deal with the issues there, right? We can't successfully deal with the issues up here, whatever they may be, until we get down to the root. So we need to deal with the root of humanism. We need to deal with the root of false religions, right? If we're going to be able to successfully deal with those issues. Okay, so the reason why I think that this Bible study method is so useful is that it enables me to see how God addresses these topics as I'm reading the Bible, see these verses in context, and then collect them together for my own personal use so that when I have a question about something, what does God say about having children? What does God say about male-female roles? I can open up my notebook and I can go to that section and I can see a whole accumulation of verses on that topic that will confirm to me, okay, this is the mind of God. This is what God believes about that topic. Therefore, that is what I need to believe as well. So my life is being based upon the Bible's teaching. Those are my roots. And this is just reinforcing that, right? This type of study. All right. So let's move on to benefits of my notebook. First of all, the notebook gives me a place to store my verses. When I first started doing this, I actually taped my verses onto my bedroom door. I didn't think that I was going to get that many verses. I thought it was just going to be a few and I would be able to see them in front of me every day when I, was in my room. It didn't work out because my bedroom door eventually got filled with verses and I thought, what am I going to do now? So an option might have been a cork board where you use those pens to pin everything in. But then I thought that's not going to work because I'm going to fill that up too. And am I really going to cover my whole bedroom wall with cork boards, each one for a different topic? So I thought, no, that won't work. I need to have like a book to put my verses in. And that's why I devised this method. So it gives me a place to store my verses. It also gives me a visual way to learn from my verses. I'm a very visual person. And I think that all of us, to varying degrees, are visual people. We learn from what we see, right? That's why film and, digital media is such a big thing, right? So I'm a very visual person and I like to see the verses right in front of me. I like to see how many verses I have on that topic right in front of me. You know what I'm saying? It's just, to me, it's so much more impactful to just see it right there in front of you, all collected. So it gives me that visual way to learn from my verses. And another thing that it gives me is a versatile method of organizing my verses, or sometimes reorganizing them. Sometimes I collect some and then I realized I missed something and so I reorganize them. I could write down these verses on lined paper, but to me, it wouldn't be as visual as having an actual little paper, like this, a separate little paper for each verse. To me, that's much more impactful, and somehow my brain is able to deal with it better because it seems more organized than having just one long list of all these Bible verses I've, jotted down in a notebook. So I like this really versatile method of organizing, and I can rearrange the verses because I put tape on the back. I'll talk a little bit more about that very soon. But anyways, so those are the benefits of my notebook. A place to store my verses, a visual way to learn from my verses, and a versatile method of organizing my verses. Now let's move on to the third part of this video, which is tips for starting a notebook of your own. So like I said in the beginning, you just need one of these folders. It could be made out of paper or it could be made out of plastic. I really recommend plastic because it's just more durable. You need some paper. Basic white copy paper would work out well. I have a mix. It's not really for any good reason. But honestly, if you wanted, you could buy different colored paper for different topics. Instead of, using dividers, which would actually make this more bulky, you could just use different colored paper. This style of notebook actually could work in a 3-ring binder. If you have a hole punch with 3 hole punches, it would actually work really well that way too. I just put it in here because this is what I had available, and I don't know. It's thin and it fits in places easier than a 3-ring binder would, but you can do whatever you want. Okay, you're gonna need some little cards to write on. I found that card stock works better than paper. So I would recommend card stock. And I actually cut all these out myself. They're in 2-inch squares, so it's 2 inches this way and 2 inches that way. I just felt like that was a good enough space to be able to at least write one verse on and not have to use super tiny print. And then I just put a little bit of tape on the back. I roll the tape up so that it will stick. And I just put a little bit of tape on the back. If you put too much, it'll stick too much. And if you want to take this off and move it around, you won't be able to. Maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you plan on never moving them. But if you do decide that you want to move it, you don't want to have too much tape. Another option is here's an example of where I ran out of cardstock, I ran out of paper, and I just used this. You could use these sticky notes. Here's a really big sticky note, but there are smaller sticky notes, which are actually a little bit smaller than these, that might work for you too. And that way you don't have to pre-cut your own cardstock. You don't have to use tape. And if you want to take it off and move it around someplace else, it's pretty easy. So that's another option that you might want to try. And then pens. If you want to try using different colored pens as a way of further color coding your topics, you can do that. And that can be really super fun to do too. So even though this is a serious thing, right? You can make it as fun and enjoyable as you want. And besides that, can't think of anything else that you need. It's really straightforward. It's really simple. It's very cheap. And that's it. So, I had a friend ask me about how I set up my Bible study notebook. She asked me this recently and asked if I could make a video for her. And I hope this has helped you, and I hope that it maybe will be a help to other people too who are looking for just a fun, new, cheap way of organizing those Bible verses and learning more from the Bible. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day. Bye.